before we move to this exciting and inspirational lecture, as we're going to hear in a bit, I would just like to say a few words before we start. Many of you will know Bill Rammell because he is a long-standing friend of student unions in this country. As you probably know, he served as a sabbatical officer, actually a president of the student union at Cardiff University between 1982 and 1983, after finishing his honours degree in French. Before entering Parliament, he worked for British Rail, and also he was a regional officer at the NUS, National Union of Students. He went on to head the youth services for Basildon, and he worked as a general manager at both King's College London Students' Union and University of London Union. Bill Rammell was a member of Harlow District Council between 1985 and 1999, and it was actually at 1997 when he was elected a Member of Parliament for Harlow. He was appointed as Parliamentary Private Secretary to Teresa Jowell, MP, and went on to serve the Parliamentary and the Secretary of State for the Foreign Office. Following that, in May 2005 general elections, he was promoted to Minister of State with responsibilities to lifelong learning, further and higher education, and what is now the Department of Innovation, Universities and Skills. The Minister has played a really instrumental role in securing £280,000 of governmental funding for the Student Union Initiative, which is called SUI, Student Union's initiative. An assessment model that helps student unions to move forward, and an assessment model actually that our student union has adopted, and we are already in the second year of this phase. We are very, very fortunate to have Bill Rammell tonight with us at this evening, which is actually our first student union lectures from the public lecture series that are hosted by Oxford Brookes University every year. The lecture came about because the student union really wanted to develop its portfolio and offer a lot more cultural events for our students and the general public. And I would like to say many thanks for the efforts put into actually setting up this lecture, especially to the SU General Manager, Helen West, as well as every member of the Student Union staff, and also the Student Union officers for making it a reality. And of course, last but not least, this lecture wasn't going to be possible unless our Minister of Education, Bill Rammell, hasn't accepted the invitation. So he's here with us tonight, and he's going to talk on a subject which he's both passionate and highly respected. So, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Rammell.
Being televised, so I better make sure I use that. Look, I'm really sorry to be late. I can only blame the transport, but it is a real pleasure to be here. A pleasure to see some old friends in the audience. Not old, some friends in the audience, and a real pleasure, but also a bit daunting to have been asked to give your first annual lecture. You started by saying that I was going to deliver an exciting and inspirational speech. Wait till the end of it, and if you're still saying that, then I'm with you. But I'm also going to be fairly brief, so that we'll not speak for too long, so that we can actually have some questions and discussion. In fact, I'll try to remember, given the need for brevity, the story of the famous former Chinese foreign minister who started a meeting in a huge lecture hall. There were 100 people in the room, and after 2 hours of speaking, there were 50 people in the room. After a further 2 hours of speaking, there were 10 people in the room. After 6 hours of speaking, there was just one man left at the back of the room. And frankly, even the former Chinese foreign minister was getting a bit bored, and he looked at this man and he said, "Look, why are you still here?" And the man said, "I'm the next speaker." So I don't know if you do have a next speaker. I'm going to put that away. I don't know if you do have a next speaker, but I promise not to go on that long. Now, when I was planning this lecture, and I did give some thought to it, I visited your website, the Oxford Brookes Student Union website, in order to get some idea of what's going on here at the moment and which policy issues are attracting the most attention amongst students. And from this, I discovered that the union currently has a policy in favour of, I quote, the equal share of Coke and alternative products. At that point, I almost picked up the phone to cancel the engagement because there's enough alleged scandal in the air without a government minister in drugs shocker story. But I did read on, and I hope, I'm sure I don't need to explain how relieved I was to find out the policy in question was actually about soft drinks, and that's something I'll actually come back to later on. But having hopefully established that vital fact, I proceeded to think about the subject of the lecture this evening. And the union, as you know, has asked me to speak about the changing role of student unions in creating our future leaders and activists. And I do hope, as you've indicated, that this is a subject about which I bring some experience to bear. I say that because I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that without my experience in student unions and the student movement, more likely, I most certainly would not today be a Member of Parliament or indeed a government minister. You've sort of gone through my biography. I was elected president of the union in Cardiff many years ago, in 1982, then worked for NUS as a regional officer, and after a career in senior management in local government, before I was an MP, general manager of the University of London Union, where incidentally Ricky Gervais was my entertainments manager. And no, I am not David Brent. Yes, I do know who is, but Ricky's a good friend and I'm not letting on. But the experience I gained in student unions, I genuinely think has stood me in good stead as I've gone on in national and local politics and then in government. And given that that's my background, I don't think it will surprise you if I say, and I mean this very sincerely, that I believe student unions and NUS more generally are an enormous force for good in our colleges, our universities, our society and our country more generally. And I would say this, wouldn't I, as a Labour MP and a member of this Labour government, but I think this government has actually demonstrated that commitment during the course of the last 10 years. Now, I know there are some people, and I'm sure there's some in the room, who say that politics doesn't matter, that all politicians are the same, and bluntly, what's the point of voting? Well, let's just take the government-student union relationship as an example. After 10 years in power, this government talks to student unions and the National Union of Students. As you indicated, we've just recently provided funding for the Student Union Evaluation Initiative to help student unions develop. After 10 years in power, the last Conservative government was seeking to abolish student unions through the introduction of voluntary membership. The contrast for me could not be greater, and I think that does indicate that politics does matter. I actually believe it matters an awful lot. So, I've got a belief in student unions, but am I right in actually holding that belief? Does student politics actually matter? I'd like to start this evening with a thought from a famous or infamous American politician, Dr. Henry Kissinger, who wrote, "University politics are vicious precisely because the stakes are so small." Now, he was probably thinking of academic politics when he wrote that, but it sums up what I think too often the person in the street, the view that they take of student politics as well. For example, how right the Daily Mail was recently, our hypothetical person in the street might think, to describe young people coming out of universities these days as lazy know-it-alls, and how wrong was the Student Union of the University of Sussex to ban that fine newspaper from its campus a few years ago. Bloody good decision, if you ask me. But why on earth, that individual might ask as well, do a group of people who are supposed to be spending their time learning waste their time drawing up a policy document on soft drinks? Mind you, that individual would probably have also said the same thing about progressive environmental policies that many student unions in this country adopted before any government in the world outside Scandinavia had ever thought of doing so. And he probably as well would have said the same thing about the stand on apartheid that the National Union of Students took years before the government of the day and the business sector in this country and many others began to tackle that problem. And you know, I don't want to overstate it, but without the role played by student unions, students and NUS in the Boycott Barclays campaign in the 1970s and 1980s, I genuinely do not believe that change in South Africa would have come as quickly as it did.